There's something about Minotaurs in this, and that's what drew me to it, because I like Minotaurs. I don't know why. I have a thing for Minotaurs. Not like a sexy thing, but like Minotaurs intrigue me. Hello, welcome to Sun and Fury Book Reviews. As usual, I'm Tina. So this is my wrap up for April, including a mini book haul. April was a good month for me, I guess. I finished the first edit of my space opera trilogy, so that's exciting. I've lined up an awesome cover artist and hopefully an editor, so my goal is to have the book out in September, the first book, and then do November and then January. Anyway, nothing much happened to me in April other than we built a shed and had a bit of an issue with our neighbor and the shed, and then had to move the shed. It was a whole thing, and now our neighbor's a pariah because of how he handled the situation. There's a reason why Baudrillard, called subdivisions, the simulacrum of a community. Because it's not a real community. It's just people living in their own little bubbles, trying not to talk to their neighbors. But I love the neighbors, the other neighbors. The neighbors to the right and left of me are fantastic. And, there's other ones on the street I really like. It's just, you always get like one or two on the street that you're just like, what is your problem? So if you want to skip my reviews, I don't know why, you would. But if you do and just want to get to my mini book haul for April, you can jump to this spot here. So I read 7 books in April. The first book I read was Evil Under the Sun by Agatha Christie. I don't know where it went. It's a classic mystery from 1940. So it's an entertaining mystery in Christie's usual style. I mean, someone gets murdered. Who is the killer? That's the basic premise. It's set at like a resort in England, I think. I'm assuming it's England. I can't remember. I read this like a month and a half ago. So it's a, fun, classic, quick mystery. As usual, Christie excels in her exposition. Each character is given enough backstory and motivation to make them a potential suspect, but we're still left trying to guess, who the killer is. I guess the mark of a successful mystery is whether you were left guessing until almost the end, which did occur in this novel. The twist was interesting, if not, amazing or mind-blowing. The novel did feel a bit formulaic, and it's clear we're in it for the thrill of finding out the mystery, not to actually care about the characters as people or to like experience any sort of action. We basically just kind of follow Pierrot, I can't ever pronounce his name. We just follow him around basically as he like solves the mystery. It's like a no pressure read in that we're allowed to just kind of sit back and enjoy the ride, and we don't get like emotionally involved in the characters. So like we're not gonna be like heartbroken when one of them dies or something like that. So that's kind of the nice thing about these books. So yeah, that's Evil Under the Sun. The next book that I read was Watchmaker's Daughter by C.J. Archer, which is a fantasy Victorian period piece. I got it for free on Amazon. It's one of those like perma-free books that isn't on Kindle Unlimited. So this was a buddy read I did with Cece's Reading Journey for her Free Book Friday videos. It's not out yet. I've added a link to her channel so you can, subscribe, because her channel's really good. I did give it a 3 out of 5 stars, I'll tell you that. The next book that I read was The Dark That Dwells by Matt Digman and Ryan Roddy. It's a sci-fi fantasy from last year. I read it as part of Interstellar Book Club's Discord channel book club thing. Which is a really fun Discord channel. It's really has a lot of really nice people on it. I think they're reading the first Expanse book right now, which I'm not doing because I read it a long time ago and I actually lent it to my cousin, and I'm not going to go and get it back from him for that, and I'm not going to reread it. I also, write articles about The Expanse, the show, for postapocalypmedia.com, so I don't need to read the book again. Anyway, it's a really good book though, like 5 out of 5 stars. It's fantastic. I understand why they made a show out of it. Anyway, I'm talking about The Dark That Dwells. I read this on my Kindle. I DNF about maybe 1 out of 100 books, and unfortunately this ended up being one of them. I want to say right off the bat though that I think it's definitely more me than the book. I'm going to explain why I stopped at 45% though, because I think it's fair. I am still giving it 3 stars. I definitely don't want this, my review to impact kind of people reading their book, because I really want to support indie authors, but I also have to be true to myself because I am always true to myself. So the novel is rife with description, and it's clear the world building was a major focus of the novel. There's this really cool aesthetic, mix between classic fantasy and futuristic technology. That was really neat. And despite the fact I wasn't sure, you know, why a bow was a good weapon in a world with firearms, I loved the idea of a futuristic bow with a quiver that responded to voice commands and provided these specialized arrows. The specialized arrows reminded me of She-Ra though. Bow from She-Ra, but I mean, not in a bad way, just in the fact that I'm obsessed with the show She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, so I'm just gonna leave that there. The magic system in this series was really, really intriguing. I really liked it, even though I didn't get that much of it because I didn't get all the way through. I really loved the shape-shifting demon thing named Hermes, and the battle scenes were really vivid and they were really well done and exciting. So all this, you know, it's really, really good. I just lost interest when it came to the characters, unfortunately. I couldn't get a bead on the main character, Fall. I thought he was like middle-aged until about 35% in, until someone started calling him boy, and I'm like, is he like 20? And then, while I wanted to like the characters, because there are a lot of them, there was something preventing me from getting to know any of them very deeply, and thus I got a bit bored with them, and because I didn't care about them. Perhaps if I've understood their motivations enough, or what was propelling them more, you know, especially the soldiers, Ban and Bex, I would have been way more into it. But a lot of the backstory is told in this kind of expository way that felt a bit info-dumpy, and so maybe that's why I just didn't kind of feel them as much as I kind of just read about them. I am also not a fan of high fantasy in the sense of the descriptions. I am more of a just tell me it's armor and I'll make it up myself kind of person. So my eyes glaze over when there's a paragraph devoted to like setting the scene in this way. This is not a flaw of the novel. I'm gonna just say this again. This is a stylistic choice that just doesn't jam with me. I will admit I do not like Lord of the Rings. I find it boring. I find it extremely boring. I liked Wheel of Time, but I only read the first one, and will I ever read the rest of them? Maybe. I've got them on my shelf because they were my dad's. But same kind of thing. Lots of description. I like Wheel of Time way better than Lord of the Rings. But anyway, I think people that like high fantasy or love high fantasy will really enjoy this because there is a lot of this description and a lot of this kind of thing, and that's totally valid. It's not my thing. The story itself was interesting, and I am kind of curious about the end result, but I just don't have the urge to pick it up again because it's quite long. It's like, I don't know, something like 500 pages or something like that. I mean, obviously it's a fantasy novel. It's very rare to get one less than that. I found I just kept looking at the percentages left when I was reading it, and that told me it was time to just set it aside. I feel really bad, but I gotta be me. And again, I will say, I'm still giving the book 3 out of 5 stars. I recommend it to anybody that likes high fantasy and anybody that likes kind of a sci-fi with a fantastical element. Yeah, I think a lot of people will really enjoy this book. I will say there was something that didn't contribute to my rating or the DNF, but it's just something I want to point out because I feel like I have to. There's a lot of use of phallocentric language that I found rather distracting in kind of a future setting. You know, if it was set in the past, it would make sense to use crewmen rather than gender-neutral crew, and describing something as man-sized versus human or people-sized. But these words really confused me because I'd read crewmen and I was like, oh, so there's no women in these ships. Okay, but then there would be women, and I'm like, I'm really confused. And it really actually threw me off because, I don't know, I just think this is something their editor should have picked up on. And as I said, that doesn't contribute to my rating or the DNF, but I just found it a bit distracting. The next book I read was A Master of Djinn by P. Djeli Clark. This is a fantasy that has lots of steampunk alternative history aspects to it. It was just released a couple weeks ago in 2021. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. You can check out my standalone review of this novel. It's like 3 or 4 reviews back in my feed, or check out my list of single book reviews for that. It's really good. Awesome. The next book I read was The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher, which is a horror from last year. This book I listened to on Audible, and I must say that the narrator, Hilary Huber, was fantastic. Her voice was a perfect match for the main character. So this novel is a fresh, funny, and engrossing horror. The story follows Kara as she returns home to live and work in her uncle's weird tourist trap of a store called the Wonder Museum. It's filled with oddities from all over the world, including lots of taxidermy. After stumbling into kind of a routine at this place, Kara stumbles across a hole in one of the walls, which leads somewhere else. With her friend Simon in tow, Kara stumbles into a horrific mystery, and she might not make her way out. The Hollow Places was a lot of fun. normally I have trouble identifying with like everyday women in stories. I'm not sure why. Perhaps because I sometimes find the characters too generic, you know, because they kind of are made to please everybody or to fit a mold. Or they're modeled after women who just aren't like me, like aka they're not weird freaking nerds. But I liked Kara. She was a normal kind of woman. I could see myself being friends with her. Perhaps it's because she accepts her faults and flaws and just goes with it, as well as having a bit of quirkiness to her that makes her kind of realistic. She had this self-deprecating sense of humor as well, that it was relatable and not pathetic. And that's a really hard line I find to cross with books especially, is like you have a character that's always like, you know, nagging on themselves, but sometimes that gets really annoying, but she never got that way for me. The other character, Simon, was also fun and likable. He reminded me of David from Schitt's Creek for many reasons, but mainly for his deep sarcasm. The two played off one another really well, and this easy friendship that was believable. There really isn't anyone else in the novel. Like, there's a few minor characters. There's one guy named Martin Sturtevant that I think will live in my mind forever. He is one of the creepiest moments in the story, and you're just like, oh yeah, anyway. Oh, Martin. This novel is funny, though. It's really, really funny. I laughed out loud numerous times while I was listening, and by listening I mean I was walking my dog and my baby and laughing to myself, so the neighbors were probably like, oh god, what's wrong with her now? I really wish I had actually read this book in like paperback, because then I could provide some examples of what's so funny, because I don't take notes while I'm doing an audiobook, especially when I'm walking my dog. But there's a part at the start where she compares her mom's arguing to like two stags with their antlers intertwined, and I was like, that made me laugh. How she worded it was really funny, but it also kind of reminded me of my relationship with my own mother. Anyway, I was not expecting so much like humor from a horror novel. The horror aspects, to be honest, weren't that scary, but I was fine with that, you know. What I loved was the mystery and the kind of tone surrounding the hollow place. If you've read House of Leaves, there's a serious vibe from that going on at the start, but then it turns into something completely different. There are mysteries, some of which, you know, are resolved at the end, and then some that aren't, but they aren't resolved in a good way. They're resolved in a way that kind of makes you wonder, not makes you think that's a plot hole. At a couple points, the story did start to drag a little bit, but it wasn't egregious, and the story soon ramped up again. I was never confused, and I loved the setting, both the Wonder Museum and, you know, the Willow World or whatever. This is definitely a book that I will pick up in paperback if I stumble across it used somewhere. I'm not going to buy it new, but, you know, I definitely would like to own a copy, actually, and I'll definitely pick up another book by T. Kingfisher. So yeah, I give it a 5 out of 5. I recommend it to people that like horror that isn't super, super scary, or, you know, people that like kind of alternate worlds and that kind of thing. It's really fun. So another one that I read was Sodom and Gomorrah, which is In Search of Lost Time, Volume 4 by Marcel Proust. If you want to hear about this, you can go to my Proust Reflections playlist. I was doing like weekly videos of me reading Proust, and then I started doing bi-weekly videos, and then I was like, nobody's watching this crap because it's Proust and no one cares. So I'm just gonna like review each book as I go through when I read them, because I'm slow, because I really loved the first two. The first two books are fantastic, but then books 2, 3, and 4, Marcel becomes so annoying. He's just like such a jerk and a whiny brat, and there's so many rich people, and I've mentioned this before, but I'm more of a like eat the rich person, so I'm like, I'm not interested in these rich people. Like French Revolution, please. Anyway, at some point I'm going to post, I haven't even posted this review yet, at some point I'll do it in the next couple weeks. If you're waiting for me to post my Proust, you'll just have to wait. That sounded really weird. I'm here for it. The last book that I read was Roadmarks by Roger Zelazny. You can see my classic sci-fi book review for this one. This book is wild, I will say, and very interesting. So that's it. I'm currently reading Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia, so expect a review of that soon. If you're done with me and you don't want to see my mini book haul, that's fine. If you want to keep looking at me or listening to me or whatever you're doing, I'm going to go into all the books that I bought this month. So the first book that I ordered was Alex Wells' Blood Binds a Pack. This is part 2 of this book, Hunger Makes the Wolf, which was really fun, and I had to order this from Amazon because I couldn't find it anywhere else, and then they didn't send it to me, and it got like lost in the mail, so I had to contact the seller and be like, I didn't get my book, and then they had to send me a new one. It took me like 3 months. I ordered this back in January, and it just came like 2 weeks ago. Anyway, so this book is really fun. So I guess I guess I'll just read what it is. War is coming to Habravani's world. The corporation that holds it in monopoly, Transrift Inc., has at last found the source of the power that enables interstellar travel, and they will mine every last grain of it from Tenagawa's world, no matter what the cost might be. Since Hob used her witchy powers to pull a massive train job and destroy Transrift's control on this part of the planet, her Ghost Wolves gang aren't just outlaws, they're the resistance. Meanwhile, Meg's minor collective are growing restless as Transrift pushes them even harder to strip the world of its strange blue mineral. But something new is coming, and with a power far stronger than they have ever encountered before. These books, they sound silly, but it's really, really fun. It is basically a sci-fi fantasy set in like a Western world. It's really, really cool. I highly recommend Hunger Makes the Wolf. I'll point it out, I'll say that the author is non-binary, which is good because I don't have a lot of books by people who are non-binary, so I'm trying to expand my author repertoire in that way, so I'm really happy to have these books here to start with. If anyone else has any non-binary authors that they can recommend, science fiction preferably, let me know. Then I bought a whole bunch of ebooks because I have BookBub, and BookBub is bad for me because I'm like, oh, this is $1. Yeah, sure, this is $1. Okay. So what did I get first? The first book I got was called The Land Breakers by John Earl. Mooney and Ima Wright, 21, former indentured servants, long habituated to backbreaking work but not long married, are traveling west. They arrive in a no-account settlement in North Carolina and on impulse part with all their savings to acquire a patch of land high in the mountains. With a little livestock and a handful of crude tools, they enter the mountain world, one of transcendent beauty and cruel necessity, and begin to make a world of their own. Mooney and Amy are the first to confront an unsettled country that is sometimes paradise and sometimes hell. They will soon be followed by others. Set deep in the Appalachian wilderness. Appalachian, oh my god. I play enough Fallout 76, you think I would know how to say Appalachia. Wilderness between the years of 1779 and 1784. The Landbreakers is in saga like the Norse sagas or the Book of Genesis. Oh, great. A story of first and last things, of the violence of birth and death, of inescapable sacrifice and the faltering emergence of community. Anyway, and he goes on some more to talk about how good this book is. I picked this up because I really love stories of people surviving in the wilderness. There's a really good memoir of this woman. Oh my god, I'm never going to remember what it was called. I'll look it up and I'll post the picture here about this woman who has this crazy life story being like a pioneer woman in the same kind of area. Anyway, so this book sounds interesting to me. I'm not sure when I'll get to it, but it was like $1, so I'm like, well, I'll buy this for $1. I'd buy that for $1. That's basically my theme when it comes to BookBub books. The next book that I bought was a novella, The Tower of Mud and Straw by Yaroslav Barsukov. Forgive me. So this was a 2021 Nebula Award finalist, which is pretty cool. So, Minister Shea Ashcroft refuses the Queen's order to gas a crowd of protesters. After riots crippled the capital, he's banished to the war to oversee the construction of the biggest anti-airship tower in history. The use of otherworldly technology makes the tower volatile and dangerous. Shea has to fight the local hierarchy to ensure the construction succeeds and to reclaim his own life. He must survive an assassination attempt, find love, confront the place in his memory he'd rather erase, encounter an ancient legend, travel to the origin of species, and through it all, stay true to his own principles. This sounds like a lot for a novella, but I'm really intrigued by this. I think I'm going to throw this in my June read because it's a novella and it's easy to read. I got this, I think I paid like $2 for this one. Ooh. And I've heard of this before on Twitter, so I was like, yeah, I'll grab it for cheap. I'm also listening right now actually to A History of What Comes Next, which is by Sylvain Nouvel. So I'm listening to this on audiobook and it's really good because it has like different narrators. Like there's like 6 or 7 different voices and they do like proper accents and stuff. It's a really, really, really good ebook. Or sorry, audiobook. So there's a whole bunch of stuff and then it says, over 99 identical generations, Mia's family has shaped human history to push them to the stars, making brutal, wrenching choices and sacrificing countless lives. Her turn comes at the dawn of the age of rocketry. Her mission to lure Weimar von Braun away from the Nazi Party and into the American rocket program and secure the future of the space race. But Mia's family is not the only group pushing the levers of history, and an even more ruthless enemy lurks behind the shadows. A darkly satirical first contact thriller is seen through the eyes of women who make progress possible and the men who are determined to stop them. I'm really into this. It's a lot of fun. I heard of this book from Scott at Book Invasion, so he talked about how he listened to the audiobook, and I can't remember, but I don't think he liked it as much as I'm really liking it, but I'm really loving it, so I'll be posting a review of this for sure. probably in a few weeks, because it takes me like a month to read an Audible book, which is great that Audible's like $15 a month, because it's like the cost of what, one book, and I listen to about one book a month, so it's a pretty good deal for me. I also picked up The Forever King by Ben Galley. I picked this up because he posted about this on Twitter. I do buy a lot of books that my fellow indie authors talk about on Twitter, so it is a good place. This one sounds really cool. Mithrid Fen wants nothing to do with magic. Magic is a curse word banned by the vast Arca Empire and punishable by death. Its purging has finally brought peace to war-torn Emaneska. Only a stubborn rebellion led by the warlord outlaw king raids and pillages the empire's northern fringes. To Cliff Brat Mithrid, this is an age of tranquility and childhood games. That is until an illegal spellbook washes up on her shores and she finds herself thrust into a war she never knew existed. Now hunted by demons and magic, she is dragged inexorably north to Skalusin and its rebels fighting dogly to preserve a memory of freedom. Mithrid holds no such ideals. She fights for revenge and nothing nobler. If spilling blood means helping the outlaw king, then so be it, even if it means an all-out war. So this is part one of a trilogy. There's something about Minotaurs in this, and that's what drew me to it, because I like Minotaurs. I don't know why. I have a thing for Minotaurs. Not like a sexy thing, but like, Minotaurs intrigue me. Anyway, the story of how the Minotaur in the Labyrinth of Knossos came about is quite interesting. I'm not going to talk about it here. I've got two more books. These two were NetGalley arcs that they gave to me at the last minute, but that's okay. I'm going to power through and read them. The first is Ten Low by Stark Holborn. It says Firefly meets Dune in a breakneck race to escape across an alien moon thriving with aliens and criminals. This sounds like a book that I will love. This is long. I'm just going to read the first part. Ten Low is an ex-army medic, one of many convicts eking out a living at the universe's edge. She is desperate to escape her memories of the interstellar war and the crimes she committed, but the trouble seems to follow her wherever she goes. One night, attempting to atone for her sins, she pulls a teenage girl, the sole survivor, from a wreck of a spaceship. But Gabriela Ortez is not an ordinary girl. The result of military genetics program, she's a decorated army general from the opposing side of the war to Ten. Worse, Ten realizes the crash was an assassination attempt and that someone wants Ortiz dead. And there's a whole bunch more, but it sounds really intriguing and I'm super into this. Because I like Dune and I love Firefly. And then the last one I got was The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri. So, this is the beginning of a new trilogy. Everything's always a trilogy. It's inspired by the history and epics of India, in which a captive princess and a maidservant in possession of forbidden magic become unlikely allies on a dark journey to save their empire from a princess's traitor brother. I'm actually not going to say anything more about it, because that's intriguing enough. I don't think I even read the rest of it. I was just like, request! So, yeah, I'm going to be reading that one too. And so I've got a really interesting month coming up, and I hope you liked my mini book haul. If you'd rather I do these as separate videos, throw that to me in the comments. I'm up for constructive criticism. I know people like book haul movies, or book haul videos. I don't usually watch them because I don't have a lot of time, so I usually tend to watch review videos, but I know they're popular, so thanks for watching. I hope you liked that, and happy May, I guess.